Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about technical writing here. Okay, and technical writing is a little bit different than kind of traditional writing in that we don't have a lot of like transitions and flowery language and things of that nature. Again, when you think about technical writing, you're trying to get technical information across as efficiently as possible. Oftentimes, technical documents are not read from start to finish. So you'll see right off the bat, you've got things like headings that you wouldn't typically see in other documents. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. When we set up a heading, the way we set that up is actually using styles. And if you haven't used that before, that is right up here. So if I click on styles and I click on this first one, you see I'm under the title style. And again, these are all default in Word. You can make changes if you want. You can click here, click on modify. I'm not going to go through this, but if you want to make changes to how the headings look, that's fine, right? So that's my title. My author name is under subtitle, but then most importantly, under introduction, you see I'm under heading 1. Same thing with theory, heading 1, right? Versus normal typing, which is under normal, right? So you come to apparatus, again, heading procedure, data, discussion, conclusion, bibliography, right? These are all things that would typically show up in a a lab document or a research document. Now, the reason we do this is because oftentimes we need to create a table of contents, right? If you've got a 200-page manual, you want to know where certain things are. And if you set them up with those headings, you can easily create a table of contents showing you, what page number. And then if you make changes and everything moves, you can easily update those page numbers without having to go through and see where each heading actually is. Now, for a short document, that's not a big deal, but you can imagine with a large document, it'd be very time consuming to do that every time you make a change. So the way you do that is once you've set up everything using those headings, you can go under references here and you can go ahead and create a table of contents, right? And they've got a lot of automatic tables. You see that they've got table of contents, heading 1, 2, 3. Now I only used heading 1, but again, there's lots of different, you can custom them and things like that. I'll let you play around with that as necessary. But if you set it up with those heading styles, then it'll basically go look every time it sees a heading, it will list it and put what page number it's on. So it's a very powerful tool, can really help you in doing those table of contents. And, as things move around, they can get updated and things of that nature, right? So again, using styles will be very helpful as you go through. And as we see more styles, I'll show you how to use those and why we're using those moving forward. Okay. So as I continue to move forward, you see I've got an introduction. In the introduction is basically two things that you want to create in the introduction. Basically, what are you going to do? Okay, and that's basically the purpose. That's one paragraph of, hey, what are we looking for here? Second paragraph is, hey, here are the headings that we're going to do, right? So first we're going to talk about some background, then we're going to talk about the procedure, lay out our results, and then give you a conclusion. That's basically what the two sections say. Now, as you go through, and I'll talk more about this when we get to the procedure, which is the easiest way to talk about this, just remember that the reason you're writing, keeping in mind who you're writing for and what they're reading, right? So you want to use what's called the third person passive. You don't use I and we and things of that nature. You're always just kind of telling what was done. So the purpose of this lab was to consider, right? This was done using force table. Okay. So again, don't bring yourself into it. Don't make it personal. It's very much like a third person account of what happened in there. Okay, in the next section, we're going to talk about theory, which is basically background. Again, you don't need to understand what we've got here. The one thing I do want to show is that we do have some citations here. And this works within technical writing or not. I'm going to go ahead and include this styles idea. Okay, and we can automatically insert these citations, which is right up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of scroll to the bottom of the document so you can see the bibliography and things. So let's say I want to insert a citation here. Okay, so right after I say using vector addition and I want to insert a citation, right? So I can go ahead and insert a citation. You see I have these citations that I can select from. Let's take, for example, I want to insert a new citation. So I can go ahead and add new source. Okay, so I've got this book here, that's my name, engineering stuff is the title of the book. Okay, I'm not spelling things well. You can always do journal article, proceedings, wherever it might be coming from. You can create these sources, right? So let's say this was in 2019, Wausau, New UW Press, whatever it might be, and click OK. Now it's going to insert that in here. You can always come in here and manage your sources. You see them up here. So like, oh, I made lots of mistakes. I can edit this, right? So this should be like that. Stuff is not quite right. Right? I can do that. Okay. Uh, okay, and it'll make those up, and I can always add more stuff. I can create a new one, right? I can do a journal article, whatever it might be. You can put all of these sources in there, right? And you can move them, back and forth. You can have a master list and a current list. A little check mark says you've actually cited them in there, and that sort of a thing. And you can hit close, right? So again, let's say I want to make another citation, again, I can go into insert citation. That one I just created has been added. I want to recite that first one, and it puts it in there. Okay. Now it puts a number in here because I'm using IEEE. I'm a big fan of numbered lists, but if you're in an English class and you need to use MLA, you can do MLA. Look, it automatically puts the MLA formatting in there. Or if you're in a psychology course, you want to do APA, it puts that formatting in there. Notice the bibliography updated as well, right? If I go back to IEEE, it updates the bibliography down there. Okay. So as you're making these changes, it's automatically updating the bibliography. If you need to include, let me just go ahead and delete this. How do I easily, probably right here, delete? Oh, no. That would be easier to, well, I'll just create it below, or I can do it this way, I bet. There we go. Okay, so if you want to create your own bibliography, again, you go back in just like in the table of contents, go under references. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'll delete that later, but you can go ahead and insert your bibliography, references, works cited, and again, I'll use whatever style that you've included in there, right? So there's my bibliography that I included. For some reason, I cannot delete this guy, but maybe I'm worried about the wrong stuff. There, got rid of it. Okay, so that's how you can do references. Again, very useful, not only for our class, but any class that you might have moving forward. So that's how you can use those references within this. So here's another thing that you see. You see figure 1. Now, when we do figures, we want to put the figure as close to where I talk about it as I can. And you must talk about it. You don't just put in figures without discussing them. So you'll see here, you'll say vectors can also be added using rectangular coordinates as shown in figure 1, right? So figure 1 is here. I talk about figure 1. So you never want to just put a figure in without discussing it. That's really what we're doing here. With the figure, you want to give it a number and a title. That goes below the figure. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm using styles. Okay, so you can see that it's using caption as the style for this. So if you wanted to make a list of figures or a list of tables, you could include that in there as well, which can often be helpful. So again, using these styles are very helpful for certain things. Okay, with a figure, I assume you can input a picture without too much trouble. Copy and paste it in there. Okay, but just make sure that it's legible. Understand that you need to be able to read it, so make sure the font sizes are the correct size and what have you. So again, any figure should go near where you talk about it. You must talk about it, give it a number, give it a title as shown here. Okay. The next thing is an equation. Okay, and sometimes an equation is used in math, right? Or in technical documents, I should say. Okay, and you see that it's pulled away, it's centered, and it's given a number. And again, that way I can reference back to it later on. If I want to say, oh, hey, use equation 1 to solve this, I can go back and see what equation was. Equation was 1 was. Okay. Notice also that it's part of a sentence. This is one sentence right here. It says equilibrium of a particle can be expressed as that figure, where the sum of the forces is the sum of the forces, sigma Fy is the sum of the forces in the y direction, right? That is a single equation, right? Okay, so notice I didn't capitalize when I got down here to where, right? And the sentence just continues. So let me go ahead and show you how to do this. So if let's say I want to put this equation, or let me say it this way. The equation for Newton's second law is, and what I do is I do something like that, and what I can do is I can insert an equation over here, okay? And lots of different stuff. You can do fractions, you can do radicals, you can do integrals, right? You can do summations like I had. You've got all these symbols over here, Greek symbols and gradient symbols, and I'm gonna let you play around and figure out what you've got in here, right? But let's just put in F equals ma because that's what Newton's second law is. Okay, but that's, you can insert this equation and do lots of stuff. You can do, parentheses. Anyway, you'll play around. As you learn more math, you'll understand what a lot of these things are for, right? And then we give it a number. Now, that one, this, we'll call this number 1. I probably should have put below. That means I'll update this one to number 2, like so. Now, to get them centered, okay, let me view my ruler. It's usually easiest to see on the ruler. And what I can do is I can go under home and I can go into paragraph and I'm going to set my tabs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set 2 tabs, right? So this is 6.5. So I want one right in the middle, which would be 3.25, and I want it centered. We'll go ahead and, oh, sorry, 3.25 goes here, and then set that as my centered, what was that? Probably 0.25, I'm not sure. That's the default one, right? So I want to include that one. I also want to create one that is at 6.5 and it's right justified and set that. That's going to set that number, and I can click OK. So you see now I've got this little center tab here. I've got this little right side tab here. So if I come over here, right, and I get in front, of my equation, I hit the tab, first tab will go to the center. Now I've got that centered equation just like that. Now if I tab again, it'll right justify that next one. So I set those tabs. There I have my equation like that. And then again, I can include or continue my sentence where F is force, and whatnot. Okay. And then continue moving on like that. So that's how you can set up that equation if you have an equation in an example. Okay, quick thing on figures. A lot of times line drawings are better than photographs, right? You can actually get better information without all the clutter if you use something like a line drawing. Now, if you still use a photograph, that's fine. Just make sure that there's not a lot of clutter in it that draw your eye away from what's important, because we want to put what's important at the forefront. Okay. Another thing that's helpful with figures are these labels here. If you don't know how to do these labels, right, what I can do is I'll come over here and I'll insert a text box and just do a simple text box. Whoa, I didn't want to do that. Let me back it up. Let me put it right here. Insert text box. We'll just do a simple text box. Wow. I don't like it that way. Let me try it this other way. Let me put the arrow in first. We'll go ahead and we'll go insert, and we are going to do a shape, and we're going to put an arrow in there, and we're basically just going to point at this guy here. Okay, and I'm going to change it to black. You can play around with size and shape and everything like that. Okay, and then I will go ahead and within here I can draw a text box, and I'll just put the text box right here. We'll call this stand. Okay, and you can mess around with the size, right? You can move things around however you want. You've got the arrow there, and you can move that. I don't want that outline, so I'll click on the text box, go to outline, no outline, right? And there you have that. So that's how you can add a label if you want, and it again can be very helpful with a lot of figures that you're drawing. Okay, again, give it a number, give it a title, make sure you discuss it in, in the prose that you're talking about. Okay, so next thing, procedure. Okay, first of all, notice that I don't just jump into the procedure, right? I basically introduce it and say, following is a description of a procedure with a colon. That's how you introduce a list. Okay, so you don't just jump into the list. You basically say, hey, here comes a list, colon, and then you hit the enter key, and then you can go ahead and, click on a number if you just want to do a bulleted list, do an outline, whatever it might be, right? And again, you can just do the list like that and then start doing it. Now, the other thing is, let's talk a little bit about the language. What a lot of people will do is they'll start doing kind of like the cookbook approach where they give commands, do this, right? Place it there, measure this. That is not how we should do it. The other thing you don't want to do here is tell me what you did. Don't say, hey, I placed a pulley at the 20 mark and then I hung a mass on it, right? Again, you want to pull yourself out of it. You just want to say what was done. So again, we're going to use that third person passive voice here. So it'll says a pulley was placed at the 20-degree mark on the force table. That's the proper way to say it. Don't say place the pulley at 20-degree mark. You're not giving a command. You're just telling what was done. So again, avoid that cookbook of just saying place the pulley at 20-degree mark. That is not right. You want to tell me what was done. The other thing you don't want to say is I placed the pulley at 20-degree mark. No, no, no. Again, you want to pull any personalness out of this. Okay, just tell me what was done. That's that third person passive voice in using this. Okay, moving on. Introduce the data. Okay, if you have a table, again, you need to give it a title. You need to give it a number. Tables are read from top to bottom, so we put the title of the table at the top of the table. Again, these are going to be pulled from an Excel spreadsheet, so you can just copy and paste from an Excel spreadsheet of your table. Again, you want to discuss the table in the prose, so don't just put a table in there without any discussion of what the reader is looking at. Okay, so you introduce the table, you discuss the data, and you end with a conclusion. I know I went through those last things very quickly. We'll talk, about specific things, but this is the general outline of a lab report. In general, technical writing, you tell them what you're going to tell them. That's the introduction. You tell them, that's the body, and then you tell them what you told them, which is the conclusion. Okay, so that's a really, really quick overview of what technical writing kind of looks like, as well as how to use Word to do a lot of the things within a technical document.